There is not a single unambiguous statement, not a single unequivocal statement where Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, himself says that I am God, or where he says worship me. Yes, sister.
So here's the deal. Yes, the Greek word theos is used both times in the phrase to refer to God. However, there's a subtle difference in how it's used. So here, theon is in the accusative case, which is the definite article, ton, meaning the God, referring specifically to God the Father. Here, theos is in the normative case without the definitive article, emphasizing the divine nature of the word, that is logos. So this construction suggests that the word shares the essence and nature of God without implying that the word is the same person as God the Father. In fact, this John 1:1 is literally one of the main proof texts for the Trinity once you actually understand the Greek grammar and how these two words are really the same word, again, emphasizing the shared essence and nature between the word, logos, who was with God and who was God. The word God there is the same in both instances. You'll notice how he keeps coming back to this same question, this argument of, did Jesus claim to be God? Where are the red letters? Did Jesus claim to be God? And this is what David Wood has called the exact words criterion. It goes like this. Jesus never said, I am God, worship me, so therefore he never claimed to be God. Problem solved, simple as that. But understanding why this is so silly and fallacious is extremely important because you'll hear this all the time. So I'm going to pitch now to David Wood as he unpacks why this does not pack the punch that people think that it does.
Years ago, I noticed that Muslims around the world were asking the exact same question in exactly the same words. I would go to California and a Muslim would ask me, where did Jesus say, I am God, worship me? I'd go to London and a Muslim would ask me, where did Jesus say, I am God, worship me? I'd get messages from Muslims in Pakistan and Indonesia saying, where did Jesus say, I am God, worship me? So it was clear that Muslims were being trained to ask Christians, where did Jesus say, I am God, worship me? And if you watch some lectures by Muslim apologists, you can see them telling Muslims to ask this question. Now, before we continue, let me ask you, where did Jesus say, I am God, worship me? If some of the classic proof texts for the deity of Christ are popping into your head, you're going to run into a problem. Because if a Muslim asks, where did Jesus say, I am God, worship me? And you reply by showing that Jesus claimed to be the I am of the Exodus, that same Muslim has also been trained to say, no, I asked you where he said, I am God, worship me, in those words. You see, Muslims aren't being trained simply to ask the question. They're being trained to demand exact words. You Christians say that Jesus is God and that we're supposed to worship him. If you can't show us where Jesus said, I am God, worship me, in those exact words, you're clearly wrong about Jesus. So before you offer a case for the deity of Christ, you might need to deal with the exact words criterion, which is a silly criterion. In fact, the easiest way to get past the exact words criterion is to flip it back on whoever's using it. For instance, you can say, I'd be happy to show you where Jesus said, I am God, worship me, as soon as you show me where he said, I'm only a prophet, don't worship me, in those exact words. No other words. I want just the words, I'm only a prophet, don't worship me. That's what Muslims believe about Jesus, right? Well, if you can't show me those exact words, the Islamic view of Jesus must be false. Or you can say, show me where Jesus said, I am the virgin-born son of Mary, in those exact words. You can use the Bible or the Quran, but I want those exact words, or Islam is false. This will help show that demanding specific words is absurd. The fact that so many Muslims use this approach, an approach that, if applied consistently, could be used against Islam, strongly suggests that Islamic apologetics isn't meant to get people to the truth. It's meant to confuse. Once we get past the exact words criterion, we can ask a much more reasonable question. Where and how did Jesus claim to be God? And here we can look at all kinds of interesting passages. But when you start going through these passages with your Muslim friends, you're going to run into a second problem. Reinterpretation. If someone believes that Jesus never claimed to be God, and you show him a passage where Jesus claimed to be God, there's a tendency for him to reinterpret any claims that conflict with what he already believes about Jesus. Fortunately, there's a way to block reinterpretations of some of these passages because, according to both the Bible and the Quran, there are certain claims that only God can truly make. For instance, God alone can correctly state that he created the universe. A mere human being can say the words, "I created the universe," but the statement would be false coming from anyone other than God. So, if Jesus said things that can only truly be said by God, we have to conclude that Jesus claimed to be God. Interestingly, Jews, Christians, and Muslims agree on many of the claims that can only truly be made by God.
Okay, so now here's the kicker. The Bible and the Quran actually agree that there are certain things that only God can do, right? So, for example, creating the universe, once that's established that that is something that only God can do, create the universe, and Jesus, if he claims to create the universe, I think we can follow the logic here of what is happening. So let's go one step further now. Jews, Christians, and Muslims agree on many divine titles. For example, in Surah 57:3, the Quran refers to Allah as the first and the last, a title also used for God in Isaiah 44:6. Interestingly, Jesus applies this title to himself in Revelation 1:17 and 18. Let's take another example. It's understood in both Islam and Christianity that only God can forgive sins. Look at Surah 3:135, where it says, "Remember Allah and seek forgiveness for their sins, and who forgives sins except Allah." And we know that in the Bible, this is taught as well, that only God can forgive sins. Yet in Mark 2, we see Jesus forgiving sins. Please read Mark chapter 2 to see this whole event as it unfolds, because it's actually extremely fascinating. It becomes so clear that even the Jewish religious leaders accused Jesus of blasphemy because they understood what was going on here. Jesus then heals the paralytic in this story to prove that he is not a blasphemer, as he was accused by them of being, but that his claim and his authority match. He can and does forgive sins. He can heal as well. He has a power that matches his claim. Next, God is described as the final judge in, again, both the Quran and the Bible. Surah 22:56 and 57 and Psalm 9:7-8 affirm this. Yet Jesus in Matthew 25:31-32 claims that he will judge all nations. Again, a role that only God can fulfill. Also, Jesus takes on the title, the truth, which from the Quran is reserved, again, alone for Allah in Surah 22:6, and in the Bible for God in Psalm 31:5. Yet Jesus says in John 14:6, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Two more quick examples here. God is said to raise the dead in Surah 22:7 and in 1 Samuel 2:6. Yet Jesus claims he will resurrect the dead in John 5:25-29. And he calls himself the resurrection and the life in John 11:25. Finally, both Islam and Christianity understand that God will not share his glory, yet Jesus asks to be glorified with his Father in John 17:5. And is worshipped again and again and again throughout the Gospels by his disciples and by other people who see him as he truly is. Each of these claims are unique to God, yet Jesus uses them to reveal his identity and his divinity. If Jesus were only a prophet, such statements would in fact be blasphemous, and this poses a huge challenge to Muslims because the Quran affirms the Bible as being truthful and authoritative. And so an honest assessment of the Bible revealing Jesus's claims at divinity raises a problem that you now have to reckon with. A lot more could be said here. I'll leave it at this for now. Also, if you guys like this type of content, if you like what we're doing on this channel, please consider joining the Wisdom Society. If you're wondering what is the Wisdom Society, I'm glad you asked. Check this out.